Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. I'm so glad you're here. And we're going to get right into it today. Today's episode is for anyone who is trying to build a strength training habit or get back into one. We know there's lots of research out there that touts the tremendous benefit of regular strength training. There are lots of perks to strength training. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about being able to live our life full out. And strength training really helps us to do that. And there are lots of reasons why you may have never built a practice of strength training or strayed from a practice that you once had. So in this episode, I want to remind you of why strength training is so valuable to the human body and really the human life, and how to establish or reestablish a practice of it so you can start reaping all those benefits. Now, this is certainly not the first time I have approached this topic on the Grace and Grit podcast. I have done lots of past episodes on this very topic. Specifically, episode 29, yes, going all the way back to episode 29, and episode 101. And I tell you that because if you want a little bit more substance, if you want a little bit more to go off of, those might be two episodes worth revisiting. I've also interviewed lots of experts on the beauty of strength training and the power of strength training, including Amanda Thebe, Stacy Sims, Kirsty Grosart, and so many others. So if you go to my website, graceandgrit.com, and you just type strength training into the search engine, you will get all of that goodness. So from the outset, I want to offer that strength training is really a gateway. It is a gateway to more confidence, a gateway to more movement capacity. Strength training is a gateway to more resilience, both physically and mentally. And it is a really powerful gateway to personal development. Because through a practice of strength training is where we can start to develop things like consistently showing up for ourselves. We can start leaning into the practice of getting uncomfortable on purpose, which of course, skill sets like consistency and leaning into discomfort will serve us in so many other areas of our life. I also want to offer that strength training is not a replacement for lots of movement in the day. And the reason I highlight this fact is because, as a culture, we're more sedentary than ever. Our world has become very convenient, and convenience is not necessarily, it turns out, a great thing for our health. So the advent of online business, working from home, spending a lot of time in front of technology is really getting in the way of us moving a lot throughout the day. And we know that movement is something that our body needs. It's a form of nutrition. And it's kind of like with food nutrition, we know that protein is valuable. But if you tried to get in all of your protein for the day in one meal, you probably wouldn't reap all the benefits of eating protein. It needs to be pollinated throughout your day so your body has an opportunity to really absorb that protein and put it to good use. And the same is true of movement. We need lots of movement in the day, pollinated throughout the day, to really optimize our need for movement nutrition. So the reason I highlight this is because so often I have seen people sign up for aggressive strength training programs, CrossFit, really heavy powerlifting, things of that nature, or even just going to the gym and working out for an hour, but then coming home and spending the next 23 hours sitting on their butt or laying in their bed, right? So I just want to, again, remind you that strength training, of course, is not a replacement for lots of movement pollinated into the day. We really want to lean into both. I also just want to remind you that there is never one sole solution to improving health. It's multifaceted. There's lots of things that improve our health, and strength training is simply one of those things. It is not the end-all be-all to health, and yet it is also an incredibly powerful nutrient in the health equation, which is why we're addressing it again today. So let's start by talking about the benefits of strength training. Strength training, of course, preserves and builds muscle tissue. And a lot of you know that I had Stacy Sims on the podcast just a few weeks ago. And in her newest book, Next Level, she specifically talks about how after the age of 30, women are losing up to 8% of their strength per decade. That's a big number. And the years around menopause can make this worse because estrogen, which is, I always say, leaving the party at this stage of life, is essential for muscle stem cell function and maintenance. So if we want to maintain strength, we want to preserve muscle, of course, strength training is a really beautiful solution to that. Strength training also improves our bone density. And in Stacy Sims' first book, which was titled Roar, she spoke to the fact that half of all women over the age of 50 will break a bone because of osteoporosis. That's a mind-blowing statistic. So strength training helps us to improve bone density. And think of the mechanics of that. When you are using muscles against resistance, you are creating torque and pull on the bone itself. And then the bone has to fortify itself against those stressors. So if you are someone who is, nervous about things like osteoporosis, strength training can be massively helpful in that arena. And then, of course, strength training helps us to improve the health of connective tissues like ligaments and tendons, which helps us to prevent injury because a lot of injuries are in those tissues. It also helps to preserve and enhance metabolism. So muscle is a very active tissue, which basically just means that it needs more energy in terms of calories to exist. And when we have more muscle on the body, we tend to have a higher metabolic rate at rest, which means you burn through more energy without having to do anything. So when you're resting, your body is actually utilizing more fuel when you have more muscle tissue. It helps us to improve body composition, which is our fat to lean mass ratio. And if you don't know of Gabrielle Lyon is a muscle-centric physician. So she talks a lot about the value of muscle tissue, especially in the aging process. And I love how she describes that, we are often sold this notion that we are an overly fat culture. But she suggests that it's not that we're overly fat, it's that we're under-muscled. And muscle, in her opinion, and I totally agree with this, is the organ of longevity. It helps us in the aging process in so many ways, many of which I've already mentioned here. Strength training also helps us to improve glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity. If you missed the episode I did with Mary Miller Brooks, again a few weeks ago, we talked a lot about this. We talked all about blood sugar and the things that we can be doing in our life to help regulate blood sugar. And of course, strength training was one of those things. Strength training improves our posture and stability. It helps to slow cellular aging. It helps to improve, of course, our speed, our power, our agility, decreases blood pressure, influences our hormones. There are cognitive benefits to strength training. And like I said in the intro of this podcast today, strength training contributes to living our life full out. It helps us to develop the mindset and the practice of leaning into hard things on purpose. In other words, embracing discomfort. It's really the gift that keeps on giving. Now, I could talk to you all day long about the benefits of strength training that I have reaped in my own personal life, but I've done lots of shows sharing that information. So I reached out to members of my Rumble and Rise community and asked them to share some of the benefits that they have experienced through strength training. And I'm going to share a few of those answers with you right here. So Marty says, I love how strength training slows me down, and I really have to focus on what I'm doing, not just go through the motions fueled by momentum and automatic thinking. It takes my thoughts away from anything else I might be thinking. It's also an endless learning experience, and I love learning. It keeps me young and intrigued with life. Sandy says, I really enjoy feeling the sense of accomplishment, both at the gym when lifting and then, more importantly, in life later, when I need to move or pick up heavy things and find that they don't pose a problem. Celeste says, strength training has helped me stay toned and fight the loss of muscle as I age. I feel better with a stronger mindset that I'm caring for myself in ways that my aerobic fitness cannot. It helps me to stay balanced in my fitness goals and helps me to minimize injuries. Sherry says, strength training has improved my balance and bone density. I also enjoy the sense of accomplishment when I can do something that I couldn't do before. That really helps my self-confidence. Diane says, it's very meditative for me, especially when I focus on the muscle being worked and I exhale with the portion of movement that has the effort. And Maria finally says here that strength training helps to boost my confidence. I love the feeling of accomplishment after doing a strength training workout. It reinforces the thought that I can do hard things, especially when I'm consistent and able to lift heavier weights. I love seeing the progress and progression of lifting heavier. It also prevents me from getting injured so I can keep running. So there are definitely some common threads here in these comments, one of which I hear is confidence. So many people speaking to the confidence that comes on the other side of building a strength training practice. So let's address why you aren't doing it, because this is what we're really here to conquer, right? Is our resistance and the barriers to building the practice. And of course, I always boil the barriers into 4 categories because these 4 categories come up time and time again. So the first reason you aren't building a practice of strength training or getting back to one is that you aren't doing your body any favors in the chemistry department. So what I mean by that is you're not getting enough sleep, so you're always exhausted. And when you're exhausted, of course, you're not going to be motivated to strength train. It requires more energy energy that your body doesn't have. It also means that you may not be feeding yourself well. So you might not be eating enough nutrient-dense foods. And I'm speaking to all the macros here. You might not be eating enough protein. You might not be eating enough high-quality carbohydrates. You might not be eating enough healthy fats. Maybe you're drinking too much alcohol. And so, of course, that is disrupting your chemistry. You're waking up not feeling so great the next day. And when we don't feel great, again, we tend not to want to exert more energy. So if you are not honoring your chemistry in basic ways, you are not going to be consistent about strength training because it is a very effortful, energy-dependent activity. The other reason you might not be strength training is because your strategy sucks. And what I mean by that, I know that sounds so elegant, doesn't it? But either you don't have a strategy, you're too busy, you have no time, you keep telling yourself someday when, so you have no strategy, or you're one of the people who every time you try to get back into a practice of strength training, you try to start where you left off months or years ago. So you're making the process way too complicated, way too effort-filled, which of course you can't sustain. The other thing around strategy that I think is really important to highlight is sometimes we're trying to force ourselves to work out in a space that we don't feel safe in, or we don't actually enjoy in any way. So I think environment can be a big reason why we aren't motivated to go strength train. Now, it's not an excuse not to strength train, but it is important for you to identify that if that is a barrier, it is your responsibility to find or cultivate a space that you do enjoy being in, that you do feel safe in. Another reason you might not be strength training is because you are consistently arguing for why you can't or won't. And this really boils down to a few things: beliefs, assumptions, expectations. So beliefs and assumptions are things like telling yourself that that's just not who I am. I just don't strength train. Well, that may be true. You may not have strength trained to this point in your life, but you can certainly adopt a habit at any time, right? You can start practicing being a new version of yourself at any time. And who you currently are is simply a culmination of all the things you've been practicing. So you can become a woman who strength trains if you decide to. I'm not an athlete, right? That's another one. You don't have to be an athlete, or you could consider that all an athlete is someone who moves with intention, right? So maybe you need to reconsider how you're defining athlete. I hate lifting weights. Anything that starts, I hate, fill in the blank, is always going to sabotage you. I have clients who tell me they hate water, they hate vegetables, right? They hate moving their body, they hate strength training. And to me, all that is you arguing for why you won't do it, right? You probably don't hate drinking water, considering that it is a requirement for you to stay alive. And the same could be said of strength training. If you want a good quality of life as you age, how is it useful for you to keep practicing the thought that I hate strength training? What would be more useful to you is to consider why you hate it. What don't you like? The environment, the exercises? Like, get specific about what it is you aren't enjoying, because that can be worked through. Another belief, of course, is I'm too old. No, you're not. There's lots of research that shows us that we get incredible benefit from strength training, regardless of the age that we start with. And then I just want to speak to expectations. A lot of women, when they get into a strength training practice, they expect immediate results. And I'm going to be totally honest with you here. You will not get immediate results. What you will probably get is the opposite of what you expect. You're probably going to initially feel more tired, more sore. You're going to have more inflammation. Your weight may slightly go up. These are all normal byproducts to starting a strength training program. Do those things last? Of course not. But things get a little bit worse before they get better. The final thing I want to speak to in terms of why you aren't currently strength training is an unwillingness to get uncomfortable or do things differently. Strength training is a practice of discomfort. If you're not uncomfortable when you're strength training, you're probably not doing it in a way that's going to affect you in a positive way. Now, I'm not talking about suffering. I'm not talking about intense pain, but there will be discomfort. So are you willing to get uncomfortable to move your physiology to higher ground? Are you willing to be a beginner, which feels awkward, in order to move your health to higher ground? Are you willing to feel on occasion like not doing it and doing it anyway? You longtime listeners have heard me use this example so many times, but think of all the things you're doing in the day that you don't feel like doing, but you do it because of the benefit you want on the other side. I always use brushing your teeth, making your bed, feeding your dog. You're not always excited and thrilled to be doing that, but you do it because there's something you want on the other side. So what would it take for you to get into that same mindset with strength training? Okay, now I'm going to give you some just quick and I think very effective tips for getting into a strength training practice or rebuilding one if you've been away from one for a while. So first and foremost, remind yourself why you want to build a practice of strength training. So often I hear women using the language like I need to or I have to. The latter is definitely not true. You don't have to. Lots of people choose not to strength train. It is not true that you have to strength train. Why do you want to? Is it so you can keep up with your hiking buddies? So you can PR in a race or some other athletic pursuit? Do you want to strength training to rebuild trust in your body? To always feel ready for an adventure? To age well? I don't know what it is for you, but it's really important that you get clear on why you want to do it. And stop telling yourself that you have to. Second, and I already spoke to this, but it's such an important point, I'm going to reiterate it. Expect discomfort, both mentally and physically. If you're doing it right, you will be uncomfortable, which is why I always think that strength training is an incredible platform for personal development. If you are not uncomfortable, you probably aren't changing your physicality. Right? We have to be uncomfortable in order to change. And that's not just true of muscle growth or muscle strength. It's true of anything in life. And again, just reminding you that there will be inflammation initially, right? Challenging your body in new ways is going to cause, and I shouldn't even say initially, literally the practice of strength training is a process of creating some inflammation on purpose. That sounds terrible. I know. Why would you want to do that? But think about it. The mechanics of strength training is that you're creating little micro tears in the muscle tissue. And then, of course, the immune system responds by sending water and nutrients to the place of friction or the place that we've created micro tears. So the muscle can be built back stronger than before, right? So when we work out, we damage our muscles and then our bodies repair them. And inflammation comes into play during the repair process. When the body increases blood flow to the area to replenish oxygen, fuel the muscles, and clear out any waste. So inflammation is a byproduct. Now, again, we don't want to live in a state of chronic inflammation. We don't want to push our body so hard that we create inflammation that we cannot recover from. But we also need to expect that muscles will be sore. Weight may slightly go up initially, or even not initially. Like if I do a really intense leg workout to this day, I've been working out with weights since my 20s. And if I do an intense workout, specifically with my legs, my weight is always up the next day. I don't freak out about it. I just know it's par for the course. And then, of course, as my body recovers, my weight comes back down. So please, ladies, do not use your weight as a reason to not strength train. More specifically, your weight going slightly up as a reason not to strength train. The other tip I have for you is it's really important that we build a solid foundation first. And a foundation for strength training, to me, is understanding proper body mechanics, right, that keep you safe, understanding some basic alignment principles when you're doing a movement, and of course, paying attention to stability of your body parts so you aren't getting injured. And this is where it can be really helpful to hire a trainer or take a class that helps you to build the foundation. So that might be Pilates, it might be foundation training, it might be even a yoga class, right? There are absolutely yoga classes that are very oriented towards posture and mechanics and stability. If you have a good yoga teacher, all of those things should be baked into a class. The other thing is learning to move your own weight before you start to lift weight. So I used to have a teacher who used to say to me all the time, Courtney, you have no business lifting weight until you can haul your own ass across the floor in a way that maintains the integrity of your structure, right? And she was spot on. So there's no reason to load a walking lunge if you can't do a walking lunge well without the weight. So always, always, always make sure that you can execute a movement well before you load it. Warm up, right? Warm up is a part of foundation. When you expect muscles to do a lot of aggressive work, you want to spend a little time waking them up and priming them for that opportunity. The next thing I want to say is progression is your friend. Now, we know that lifting heavy, Stacy Sims calls it lifting heavy shit, is really valuable, especially in the years around menopause and post-menopause. Now, when we say lift heavy, we're talking about weight that you kind of max out with around 5 reps. So to exhaust yourself within 5 reps is very heavy weight. Now, should you start there? Of course not. Based on what I just told you previously, you want to move your own body weight before you load anything. But once you start loading an exercise with weight, be gentle, right? Maybe you start in the 12 rep range, and then you work your way down to 8 reps, and eventually you work your way into the 5 rep range. But if you start by lifting really heavy, you're going to get injured, you're going to be so broken down physically, you don't want to be consistent about strength training. I would also say there's a progression to how we use equipment, right? Initially, we don't need to use a lot of equipment. Again, we're just using our own body weight. But there are machines that are designed to help support you when you are learning how to support yourself, right? So you can definitely use gym equipment, machines that help you to support your spine. But obviously, the objective is for you to do that work. So getting away from supportive gym equipment can actually be a way to advance yourself in strength training. And also, sure, things like Olympic bars are wonderful to use in strength training. They allow you to lift so much heavier than a barbell, or a dumbbell ever would. But you probably don't want to start with an Olympic bar. You might, right? Because again, that's going to require that you're already lifting 35 to 45 pounds, which is what most of those bars weigh. So start with dumbbells, start with resistance bands, start with things that you feel confident using and work your way up to more advanced equipment. Keep it simple. I cannot emphasize this enough. You do not need highly complicated programs, really ever, but especially not in the beginning. I always introduce to my students the Power of 6 programming, which is really just a combination of 6 movements that allow us to work almost every muscle in the human body. So what are those 6 movements? Well, you want to do some kind of squat. And there's thousands of ways to squat, right? But choosing a squat, choosing something that promotes hinging at the hip. That might look like a deadlift. It might look like a bridge. It might look like some kind of hip extension. You want to do some kind of lunge. It could be a stationary lunge, a forward lunge, a reverse lunge, a walking lunge. Again, there's lots of ways to lunge. Something that pushes weight away from you. So an overhead press, a push-up, a tricep press. These are all mechanics that push weight away from the body. And then, of course, we want to do something that pulls weight towards the body. A bent over row, a seated row, a pull-up. And then I like to incorporate either a weighted carry, which works a lot on stability of the body. It's literally walking for a distance while carrying heavy weight, or doing some kind of oblique exercise. Because we often don't rotate the spine enough in our workouts, and there's so much value in maintaining, of course, that range of motion. So again, just to recap, a squat, a hinge, a lunge, a pushing exercise, a pulling exercise, and then either a weighted carry or an oblique. It's just a great way to start. And if you did that program twice a week or 3 times a week, it's a great start. And it doesn't take you a tremendous amount of time. I go into a lot more detail about the specifics of this in episode 101, so you might want to go back and revisit that. Be reasonable about the dosage. If you haven't been strength training at all, that is an awesome place to be. Why do I say that? Because doing just a little bit more will benefit you. So rather than the all or nothing thinking that I know a lot of us tend to get into the trap of, how can you just up level your commitment to strength training by 1%? If you're not doing any, maybe you just do 1 20-minute session this week. That's an improvement. It is easier to add strength training in over time than it is to take away. And I see a lot of people, getting inspired to strength train, and then they commit to a 5-day-a-week boot camp. They feel terrible. They don't want to continue. And then, of course, they don't really build a practice of strength training. So remember, winning begets winning. And to feel like you're winning, you have to set the parameters up that allow you to win. You don't need to slaughter yourself. In fact, I highly recommend that you do not. Track what you're doing. So strength training is dependent on progressive overload, the concept of progressive overload, which is when you gradually change a variable. And there's lots of variables in strength training: the amount of weight you're lifting, the frequency with which you're training, the number of repetitions, the pace of the exercise. You're changing these variables up in order to continue to challenge the muscle tissue. And this is how we build strength and how we build muscle. And a lot of people go to the gym 5 days a week for more than an hour at a time, and they're doing the exact same full body workout with the exact same weight, the same sets, the same reps, the same effort for years on end. And of course, their body doesn't change. The human body won't change unless it is forced to. And muscles love to adapt. They're really good at adapting. So if we aren't tracking what we're doing, and we don't slightly change the variables when we're working out, we'll get very complacent in our training. So we just want to push the parameters slightly with each training session. That might be lifting 1 or 2 pounds more in a session. It might mean that you're not taking such a long break in between sets. It might look like you pick a slightly more complex version of an exercise that you've mastered. And this is where it can get a little tricky, right? Because we want to be consistent enough that we give the muscle an opportunity to adapt. But then once we have adapted, we want to change the programming up. I don't think this is something that you have to worry too much about in the initial phases of getting back into a practice. You could pick a program that you stick with for, 4 to 6 weeks before you actually have to question changing that program up significantly. There's a lot of things you can challenge within the program itself to keep your muscle evolving. And then, of course, I have to say add joy as a tip. We have to enjoy the process of strength training. Otherwise, why would we keep doing it, right? And so some of the things that help to pollinate joy into the strength training process is training with people, finding a community that you can connect with around strength training. Look for environments, like I said earlier, that help you to feel safe and that you enjoy being in. Listen to music that you love. Manage your brain when you're strength training. Again, it's not a have to, it's a get to. It's a want to. I already spoke to respecting your chemistry, but I will say again, you got to respect your chemistry. If you want to stay consistent with strength training, you have to respect your chemistry, which means we have to get sleep, because that's where all the magic of strength training happens, is in the recovery, where the muscle repairs itself. And if you're not giving yourself an opportunity to repair because you're not sleeping, you're not resting, you're not doing yourself any favors. We have to eat enough protein. We have to eat enough in general. A lot of people are trying to go into a heavy strength training session by fasting. Not helpful. Your muscle uses glycogen as its primary fuel source for strength training. And if you are not eating before you strength train, you're going to feel very depleted very quickly. Also, hydrating, drinking enough water. Remember, we talked earlier about the inflammation process and increasing blood flow to get all of the nutrients to the muscle and get the toxins out. Water is a big part of all of that. So if you want to build a solid practice of strength training, you have to start respecting your chemistry. And then the final thing I'll say here is explore what strength training opens up for you. Again, I don't operate that strength training is a means to an end. Like it's not the final destination. Strength training, again, is a gateway. It opens up so much more opportunity for movement, for exploration, and for adventure. So as you get stronger, consider what this might open up for you. What are things you might want to explore because you're feeling more confident, because you're feeling more resilient, because you're feeling stronger? Strength training, I promise you, will expand your life in so many ways. You will have more trust in your body. And when you have more trust that your body can support you, you have less fear. And when you have less fear, you tend to take more risks. You tend to live life a little bit more full out. And that's how we gain confidence, is by living life full out. And with more confidence, we get to express more of who we are. So I have long believed that the things we resist the most are the very things that will change us in the most profound ways. So if you are resisting strength training right now, just consider that by leaning into the discomfort of starting to build a practice, it might change your life in ways that you never could have anticipated. And of course, if you want help with this, I will tell you, I know I'm dropping this podcast in July, but inside of my membership community, which is Rumble and Rise, in September, we are going to be that month will be dedicated to the theme of up-leveling your strength training practice and your movement throughout the day. So if you're someone who could use a little bit of help with this, definitely consider coming to join us anytime, but definitely in September. So you can find out all the details of membership by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. I hope this was helpful. I hope it just gave you a little bit of fire for leaning in to the work that you're feeling called to do, assuming that you chose to listen to this podcast because you are feeling called to strength train. And again, there's lots of past episodes that you can reference for this. There is the support of Rumble and Rise that you're welcome to join at any time. And I'm sure that I will be doing more episodes on this very topic in the future. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.